so that we can save it and send it out to anyone who maybe wasn't able to make it this morning. But thank you all so much for taking some time to join us this morning. I think I will hand this over to Julia quickly just to say a few words of thanks to you all. I know that y'all are probably familiar with the Friends, but we appreciate all of the work that you do as volunteers. So I'll let Julia kind of share her thanks on that, and then we'll do some quick introductions of our counselors if you haven't met them before, and then we'll jump right into some of the questions that we have. But I'll mention too that if you have questions at any point throughout the presentation, feel free just to unmute yourself and ask, and our counselors will be happy to provide any insight. But Julia, if you wanted to say a few words, we have a few more people jumping in, which is exciting. So
sure. I am delighted to kind of see you guys, but more than anything to have your support for the longer term on the Friends board. The truth is, and I know I've said this before, but we need your support more than ever. Hi, Paige. The center is going to need a strong team to rebound from COVID-19 and to flourish this next year. In fact, I was in a meeting this morning with Tammy, who I think y'all all know is our director of programs, and she made the comment that our counselors who are with us today are drowning in clients. And so I think our team is more important than ever to offer support to the center and the mission. And there's no better group than you guys. Y'all are so kind and generous and caring. And I'm just so grateful to have your support this year. And thank you for sticking with us through this crazy milestone year. And that's all I got, Chloe.
That's great. Thanks, Julia. So I did mention when we started, I know a few people jumped on in the meantime. You're more than welcome to turn your cameras on if you'd like, or you can leave them off. If you have questions at any point, or if any of the questions that we are going over maybe spark different questions, you can unmute yourself, or you can type them in the chat. I'll have that open as well if there's anything specific that you would like to know about taking care of yourself or taking care of your family during this difficult time. The questions we gathered do cover a lot of that, and there's also some grief-related questions or anxiety-related questions. So hopefully there's something that will be helpful to you and to your family during this time. I'm gonna quickly let our counselors introduce themselves so that you get to know them a little bit more, and then you'll get to know a little bit more about them too, I'm sure, as they answer some of these questions and some of their expertise. So I'll start out because Laura's on top of me on the video screen, where the way my video is situated. So Laura, if you want to start, and then I'll jump into Letty and then Cecilia.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, everybody. I'm so happy to be here with you, and we're so grateful for the Friends Board, always, always. I'm Laura Cavazos. I have been with the center for a long time, it seems like, for about 10 years connected with the center. I have been employed full-time about 8 years, and I remember meeting Julia for the first time when I came to tour as a potential internship student, like January of 2010. And it was when I met Julia and toured the center, it was just, this is where I need to be. This is it. And it's been wonderful, passionate work to accompany grieving families through the journey of grief.
Thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome.
And we appreciate you.
Thank you.
And Letty.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Leticia. Everybody calls me Letty or Letty, as Chloe says it. And I'm so happy to be here with you all. I'm a bilingual counselor at the center. I have been here with the center since 2016. I was an intern student. Then I stayed on as a volunteer, and I was hired on early last year as a full-time counselor here. I work with all of our families, but right now I am working with the new COVID group, a new COVID loss group that we just started. And I also do, I work with bilingual families. So when we get the bilingual calls that come in, Spanish speaking families, they get directed to me so that I can do their phone intake and do their intakes as well and see how we can help them. I see individual clients, and again, as I stated, I'm over the COVID loss group, and I also supervise interns here at the center. So I really love being here. It's such a great place to be. I met Julia at a outreach. I think it was at a conference. She doesn't remember me, but I remember meeting her. She had a table, and I was so excited when I learned that this place existed. And so I got her card, and I said, maybe one day I will get to volunteer there. Little did I know I'd end up being a student intern here, and I'll work here. So it's a dream come true. Yay. And so I just really enjoy being here, and I want to thank you all too so much for all of your support. We know how important and essential you are to our center and to supporting us. So thank you.
You're so awesome, Julia. You're like connecting everybody.
Well, no, and I promise I'm going to mute myself in a minute. And Cecilia, I haven't forgotten about y'all, but you three, Laura, Letty, and Cecilia, I wanted you to know that I've been bragging about you guys to the Friends Board, that we have the most exceptional and wise, caring counselors around. And there's a big group of Friends Board members that were either driving or had little kids at home or were doing things, and they've asked for me to send them the recording. So just know how grateful we are for your time. Sorry, Cecilia, it's all you.
That's okay. Thank you, Julia. Hi, everyone. My name is Cecilia Gamboa. I am one of the staff counselors at the center as well. I'm newer to the center. I've only been there about a year. September was a year for me. And I think I'm one of the few counselors that doesn't have history with the center before. I was new to San Antonio a few years back. And so my experience and history is with the Children's Advocacy Centers and trauma work. And so I've been lucky enough to, be able to join the team that we have at the center, and just want to express, like everyone else has, our gratitude for you all and for the support, and, y'all being essential to the work that we're able to do for the children. I see individual clients at the center. I also supervise interns, and I'm the manager of the school-based program. And so what that means is that we get to take our groups out to the schools and serve children who might otherwise not be able to encounter our services. So thank you all for being here.
Thanks, Cecilia. And you all are still continuing to do the school-based support groups, correct? Even despite, distance learning or face-to-face learning.
Yeah, we actually had our first group yesterday, and so we're doing it remotely. But yeah, serving as many kids as possible.
Still working hard, as always. So I'm just going to jump right into the questions that we have. And this first one, I think a lot of people usually ask this in one form or another, but are there any books or resources that we can use to help ease our children's fears or anxieties? And there's been a few that have been mentioned before, and I'm going to include this Google Doc in the chat, and then I'll be sure that anyone that gets the recording gets this as well. But this is just a list of books that our counselors have put together or recommend, and Letty actually has one of these books in her office, so she can show it to you to see what it looks like. This is one of the many books that have been recommended.
This is called the Color Monster book. I'm just such a fan of it because it has the pop-out pictures, and it's really exciting. And I think sometimes I get more excited than the kids do about this book. And but it's really fun. And I was just bragging earlier that recently our director bought us a Spanish version. I get so excited when we get Spanish resources. So we have the Spanish version too. You can't see the words, but I'm just showing you the little pictures. But it's one of my favorites that we can share with kids, so that we can talk about the different feelings we have and giving it colors. I also have another one real quick here that's called the Goodbye book that I often have used in intakes with younger children and families, just so that we can talk about the process of this one specifically talks about losing a fish, and so it brings up conversation about losing someone or someone dying.
That is another great one.
The author of that book, Todd Parr, from the Goodbye book. If you have young children, all of Todd Parr's books are amazing. And there's one on the list here specific for anxiety. It's called I'm Not Scared by Todd Parr. All of his books are so good. They're so validating for children's emotions, and the colorful, very simple illustrations are really great for young kids.
And in that Google Doc, I'll update it to reflect the Goodbye book, because I know that's another great book that I've seen just kind of sitting around at the center. But also you'll see that it has the name of the book and the author, and then there's a picture of what the book looks like. And if you click on that picture, it'll take you to Amazon Smile. So if you all would like to purchase the book through Amazon Smile and have not designated a nonprofit, and you would like to choose us as a nonprofit to receive a portion of those funds, we would greatly appreciate it. But of course, no pressure, right? There's never any pressure to select us as that nonprofit, but I just always like to throw that in there. So hopefully that Google Doc is helpful to you all as you're looking for resources. And I've found that just by me looking up those books, Amazon is really great about like suggesting a bunch of other books that are, you know, directly connected in the same area. So I'm sure that that'll help you kind of get on the right path to finding the resources that you need for your children and their age. So something connected to books similar is, or how do we console little ones when they feel very big feelings or emotions of fear, especially now? So how would you all suggest bringing comfort to little ones when they feel just those very big feelings that they may not understand fully?
Anyone want to?
Yeah, I can go. For little ones, it's really important for us as parents to get down on their level when they're scared. We tower over them just by nature of their size. And so something as simple as like getting down on your knees or sitting down where you can see them face to face and just reflecting what they're saying. So whatever the words are that they're using, or if, you know, they're not quite verbal or they can't verbalize their feelings, but you can tell by their expressions what emotion they're feeling, just naming those for them and sitting there with them and letting them know it's okay to feel that, and then giving comfort in whatever way they find helpful, whether it's, you know, a hug or taking deep breaths or going outside. But really just taking that second to get at eye level with them and validating them can go a really long way in just helping them feel heard and secure.
And sometimes they, like Cecilia said, they need help identifying what they're feeling. They just know in their body that they're very upset, you know, and so they tears or stomping or, you know, yelling or whatever, it just shows. So they may, again, getting down on their level and being sure that you, as they're going to align with you. So you be what the play therapists call, you be the thermostat and not the thermometer. So you use your voice to bring it down to where you would like to bring them and help them. You're feeling, validating, you're feeling really scared right now, you know, bringing it down. And let's take some deep breaths, because always breathing is what will regulate big emotions. So helping guide them through taking some deep breaths. Take a deep breath with me, and maybe you can count with them. Breathe in for 4, hold it, and then exhale for 4. And there's some little rhymes I can share with you in a little while, little rhymes you can teach them depending on their age about breathing. Smell the flower, blow out the candle. You know, something really simple, but helping. They need help regulating, and sometimes holding them close to you as you are that thermostat, holding them in a gentle way can also help to regulate them.
Yeah, and if I can add to that, Laura, as you're speaking, you know, bringing to mind for me, I think as parents, we want so quickly to just resolve their pain and help them move past that. And so a lot of times we default to distractions like, oh, let me turn on the TV, or, oh, look over here. And we kind of want to distract them away from that uncomfortable emotion. But like Laura said, if we can sit with them in that space and teach them to breathe, we validate that although some emotions are uncomfortable, they're okay. They're normal to have, right? and we're teaching them those self-soothing skills, where if we default to like trying to distract them or change the subject, that may be the pattern that they learn as they grow up, that when I feel these uncomfortable emotions, I need to just focus on something else, right? So if you can sit with them and guide them through those deep breathing exercises or something soothing and teaching them how to self-regulate, it really empowers them as they move on in their lives and to being able to do that for themselves.
That is such great insight, Cecilia.
I know.
Yes. And we're so uncomfortable as parents. We don't want them to feel we don't want them to hurt or be scared, or but it is part of growing, and we do have to learn how to feel. We have
Right.
sometimes, and it is a natural tendency to want to distract. Yeah, look at that. Let's go play. Let's do, it's not
Right.
helpful.
To make the feeling go away. But I think that's great advice, is to help them work through. And many times we hear that. I think we've had a few clients who have said something similar, is you can't go around the feelings, you have to go through them, right? And so that's a big part of y'all's work, is helping children work through those feelings. So it's just figuring out the right tools to take that and put it and do the same thing at home. So similar to, the big feelings that little ones feel, what about teens? If they're feeling very big emotions during this time, how can we help them communicate their emotions? If maybe they don't want to, or, I think sometimes people think teens are difficult to talk to, but how do you communicate with them to kind of break down that barrier?
Well, I think one of the most important things that can be very helpful with teenagers is letting them know that you're available to them. You don't, just like we talked about a minute ago, that sometimes we want to redirect the feeling or like make it go away, but just being open and saying, I'm here to listen. I'm here to listen. But also when we say that, is being there to listen and not trying to give advice, not trying to make them feel like what they're feeling is not okay, or telling them to not feel that way, right? But providing them with that space and saying, look, I'm here to listen, whatever it is that you want to talk about. And then just doing this, and I have to always physically do it, just not saying anything, right? Saying, I'm here to listen, and really being present to hear. Because sometimes we want to just step in and try to fix it, right, for them. But kids tell us all the time, I just want someone to listen to me. I don't want my parent to fix it for me. I don't want them to tell me how I should feel or not feel. I just want someone to listen to me. And that's what you do for me, is that you allow me to say what I need to, and you don't tell me that I shouldn't feel this way, and you don't tell me how I should feel. I think that goes such a long ways.
I want to validate too that as a parent, it's very hard to not want to teach all the time, or instruct, or direct, or guide. And and with teenagers, like Letty said, they do it will be helpful if we can refrain from that, and just an open-ended question, and just validating, and that really made you mad. And yeah, that, without trying to fix it or come to a solution for them, or help them, or help guide them to fix it. It's just what we're used to as parents, but it's a different mindset to really want to open them, is to validate.
Yeah, and definitely with teenagers, the things that seem huge to them and that seem like a big deal, oftentimes to us as adults seem trivial, or may seem very superficial. And so being mindful as parents, just like we talked about with the little ones, of allowing them to feel what they feel and being there with them, and trying to avoid saying, well, that's not that big a deal. Why are you getting so upset, right? Because what we're telling them when we say things like, oh, it's not that important, is that what's happening for you doesn't matter as much to me as it does to you, right? And so I think this is a skill we learn as counselors, is that although something may not seem to me to affect me in a particular way, that doesn't make it less true for that person, right? And with teens, we know they have big feelings. and big emotions, and that friendships are super important. And so like Laura and Letty said, just validating them and reflecting back, much like we do with the little ones. Yeah, I could see, how you feel upset about that. It's really hard when our friends don't keep our trust, or when, we don't get to go to the dance because of COVID. And so just really validating for them. Sometimes they still need us to name what's going on with them as well. I have a 13-year-old, and I know when he's extra sleepy, or when he's been overstimulated, he gets very huggy and wants like 100 hugs. And so I name that for him when I notice that he's doing that. Like, hey, I've noticed you've asked for several hugs. It seems like maybe you're feeling a little overstimulated or a little tired. And he doesn't always make the connection for himself. So when I name it for him, he's like, yeah, no, I am. And it's just helping him bridge those two things. But we as parents, we see them develop these little coping skills or these reactions from very little. And so helping them make that connection in teenage years in a way that, like Laura said, is not correction, but it's just like, hey, I'm seeing this is what I'm noticing, and helping them put those two things together and be helpful as well.
Yeah, and I want to add saying that you notice that they needed more hugs or something. It's okay to do that. Teenagers can act really strange sometimes. We were all teenagers, right? And there's things that they do sometimes that it's like weird, like we don't get it, like we were never there, right? But they do strange things, and that's just the way it is, and that's how they react. So sometimes when they need a hug, they're not going to come say, I need a hug. Some kids will, right? But some are not going to do that. They're going to act strange and seek out attention in different ways. And so sometimes calling that out and saying, I noticed that you've need a little more attention, or what the language that you want to use to just say what you're seeing, and give them a chance to respond to that. They still may deny it, but teenagers need hugs too, and they're not going to ask for it many times, but they need that touch. They need that affection, just as they did when they were younger. So I think sometimes it's really important to remember that. I raised teenagers too, so they acted so weird sometimes, like, what is going on? And I realized they're acting out in a different way, and they're just wanting my attention, but they're not going to come out and say it. Sometimes as adults, we don't do that either. We don't say when we need a hug. We just, even our relationships, right? We can act kind of funny too.
I'd like to comment too that in our counseling classes, in our counseling skills, we're taught to reflect a lot, reflect. And it's very true that reflections are very powerful in opening up more. The person will open more, like they feel noticed. Oh yeah. And so by validating and reflecting to teenagers, I do think it will open them more. So just what you're noticing and reflecting back to them without judgment or questions. Well, often we as parents like to ask a lot of questions, but just reflections are very powerful in opening someone.
Right. Well, that's all great insight. I have a younger sister. She's not a teenager, but she's a young adult, and she's away at college. And I've started to use some of those techniques that you all have talked about before in my conversations with her, because before it was very easy for me to say, it's not a big deal. I was in college, you'll get over it. And then hearing it back when you guys mentioned it, I was like, oh my gosh, no wonder she doesn't want to be on the phone with me for very long, right? Because I'm not validating her feelings. And then I'd get my feelings hurt because she wouldn't want to talk to me. And I'm like, well, I wouldn't want to talk to me either if I wasn't feeling validated in how I was feeling. So it's interesting how those phrases can be interpreted in such a way that's so negative. And so I had to apologize. And now we talk almost every day because I just want to sit and listen to how she's doing and what's going on. So thank you all for that on many levels. So the next question is, what should we say to a child whose biggest fear is getting COVID and dying? How do I help them understand that because you get sick doesn't mean that you will die? Seems pretty heavy, but I'm sure a lot of children probably have this fear and might not know how to express it, right? Because that might be what all of the news they're surrounded by, and everyone's life has changed in one way or another. So they definitely know something is going on. So how would you all suggest tackling this fear that they might have, or having a conversation about it?
I think it's important to realize that all children, no matter what kind of death they have experienced, someone in their family has died, or they see it in the media, and now it's all around us, will have a heightened fear of death. They will worry about someone else close to them dying, or they will worry about themselves dying. It's natural. And so they will need assurance depending on their age level, developmental level, but they will always need assurance. And this is what I was taught by many people who mentored me through grief training. But most people live a long life. Most people live a long life. And we do everything we can to be safe and healthy, and to help children understand by giving examples. I wear my seatbelt when I drive the car. I drive the speed limit. I go to the doctor to keep, it's part of my job to keep myself healthy, and my job to keep you healthy. And we're doing everything we can to do that. And not everybody who gets sick will die. Not everybody who drives a car will have a car accident. You know, they just need that reassurance.
Yeah, and I think, Laura, another great point you made, and we were kind of discussing the questions before, is really monitoring and filtering out, if you can, their exposure to the news and social media. The news is very sensationalized. And so although we are in this very real global crisis, to hear the headlines several times a day and just have it put in your face over and over and over is making everybody anxious. And for little ones that don't have the maturity or the capacity or the insight to be able to care for themselves, or kind of sift through that and know what they need to hang on to and what they don't, that can be really overwhelming. And our own anxieties about it as well. And so when, if you've had in your family experience of family, as we know, some families have had several family members who have died of COVID, in that case, it is kind of hard to challenge your child's what may seem like excessive worry if they know that people have actually died. And so, like Laura said, trying to talk to them about what is in our control, right? We can wear a mask, we can wash our hands, we keep people safe by not going over to visit if we can. And so all the ways that you work to stay safe. And then if appropriate, sharing with them maybe some of the circumstances that were different. Like if they have an elderly grandparent who died, by COVID, sharing with them, that's different. Although they did die of COVID, it's because, maybe they had an underlying condition or because of their advanced age. And helping them understand that there is a difference, that there's a contrast. And so like Laura said, most people who get sick will get better. And there are these special circumstances, and this is why that circumstance is a little bit different, right? And that can help ease them, because knowledge is power. And if kids don't know, and we don't give them information, they come up with their own answers because they try to figure it out, right? They're going to try to find a place of understanding. And so if we can give them small bites of child appropriate information, we can go a long way in damping some of that anxiety because they have information and they're not having to fill in those blanks on their own.
Right.
I would also add too that to watch your own levels of anxiety as their caregiver, and so watch your media exposure. Be sure you're taking care of yourself and your own anxiety about it, because we all have it. Because it is scary. It's a very scary time that we're living in. So being sure that you are monitoring your own anxiety, because your child can feel that from you.
Right. I think it might have been Kim Fox, who's another one of our counselors, in an earlier Q&A. I think one of the first ones we hosted, she mentioned not just limiting your intake of the news too, but something that really stuck with me was making it local. So focusing on, if you need to watch the news, focus on local news and local stats. Like you shouldn't be focused, because I think at that point New York was like a hot spot for COVID. And if you're watching numbers there, it's going to spike your anxiety, but you don't really have a connection there. So that was something that I did in my own life too. Like I was trying to figure out, okay, what's going on in San Antonio, but also limiting my time doing that, because I think it's easy to get sucked into doing that every single day. But then it does make you very anxious, which I'm sure we all felt in the beginning as we kind of figured out the best way to limit ourselves. But speaking of, limiting exposure to the news and different things, I know we all are probably experiencing higher levels of screen time just in our daily life as we adapt and change to COVID. So what would you all recommend in help in limiting screen time, maybe for ourselves as adults, but especially for little ones or children who are on the computer for school and maybe stay on the computer after that, or they go and watch TV? How do you help to limit that screen time? And is there maybe a recommended amount, or how do you determine what's best for your family?
So scheduling breaks is important. Scheduling breaks, getting up and moving around. I think every family is unique. Everyone has their own needs. I know some children are doing virtual learning and others are doing, either going into the school or doing a combination. Some caregivers or parents are working from home, trying to manage a lot of different things. I think it's just scheduling, making sure that you do what is appropriate for your family and making sure you take breaks, having them maybe set timers, a timer on your phone, on the microwave, or wherever they're, wherever you can put that so that you can, depending on the age, of course, the little ones, you can put the microwave timer. If it's a teen, giving them some autonomy on that, but also just communicating with them and including them in the process. Like, we've been, and what we said earlier about validating their feelings, they may be having the need to be on there more because they're talking to friends, being interested in what they're doing too. What are they looking at? What are they spending their time on? Mm-hmm. Are they looking for contact with other people? Are they trying to search out the socialization? If so, taking a look at that, and how can you be a part of that with them?
Mm-hmm. Right. I think those are great. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Cecilia.
That's okay. One of the things I always recommend is transitions. Also, that if you're having a hard time with, transitioning your little one off, or even your teenagers off of their electronics, giving them warnings, countdowns for them. Okay, 10 minutes, we're going to have dinner. And so we're going to have to get off. Okay, now we've got 5 minutes left. We've got 2 minutes left. Because one of the things we talked about in previous Q&As is if they're playing Fortnite or Apex or Minecraft or whatever they're playing, their brain is engaged in whatever the activity is on screen. And so, especially if it's one of those activities or those games where it's a battle, right? In their brain is reacting as though they are in a battle. They've got adrenaline going and they've got these strong emotions and sensations. And so when we rip them out of that without any kind of transition, that's where we do see them having meltdowns and tantrums, or they're very moody, or we get a lot of attitude. And so if we give them those transitions and say, hey, in 10 minutes, you're going to come down, and then count down for them, we're preparing their brain for that transition, right? And that's not to say you won't see a tantrum at the end, because if this is something new that you're trying, often we have to do it for 3 or 4 weeks before it becomes consistent and they learn, okay, this is what it is. And when, my parents are telling me to get off, they mean it and they're consistent with it. And so it does take practice, but adding those transitions, and that goes for anything, that if we want our children to do something, if we can give them a heads up, hey, after this episode, or in 5 minutes, or when the song is over, after 2 swings, whatever the activity is, it's going to be time to go. And that can really cut down on some of the resistance, because we're giving them that space and that respect, right? That we recognize you're doing something. I'm going to give you a minute to wrap up. And so that can be really helpful anyway, transitioning them off of the tablets and gaming systems and stuff.
That's so great. That's such great advice.
Right.
I think too, giving, I think movement, I mean, my personal instinct is that when we're so focused on the screens and we're needing to do this for our online schooling, et cetera, we need movement. Our bodies were not made, our brains are not made for this. So we do need periodic breaks for movement. And I know we can we're tired too, but if we as parents can entice our children to look forward to, we're going to go for it, depending on the age of your child, but I love treasure walks when my children were little, and now I do it with my grandchildren. But we just go for a walk, but we're looking for treasures. And at first my grandchildren thought we were really looking for diamonds and gold and stuff, but just inviting them to think about, oh, treasures are everywhere. Look at this yellow leaf, and just inviting them to gather treasures on a walk around a block, reasonable, though you're not going to go into people's yards and take things, but just little things along the walk that they will look forward to, searching for treasures. Just little things that you can do that will invite movement, and something you can do together as a family.
Right.
I think movement is important.
And I'll mention that on our Facebook page, we've tried to post articles that have different activities. I think we posted one recently that was different activities you can do in the fall as a family during the fall. And then we posted one that was about cooking and different recipes that you can make as a family. And that's something that I love to do or when I get stressed, I stress bake. So then it just smells like pumpkin bread or, chocolate chip cookies, but those are all fun to do. I'm sure together. My fiance doesn't like helping me bake as much as he likes just testing everything once it's done. So, but if you all have the opportunity to do that as a family, definitely keep an eye on our Facebook for different articles that we try to post, just to give you guys ideas, because it can be difficult to get creative, right? When we're using our brains all day long, it can be difficult to then say, okay, well, what can we do this weekend that's fun and different, but socially distanced if, you're still keeping quarantined and different things. So the next question, similar to the screen time, and we may have already answered this, but how can I keep my children on task and focus throughout the day? I feel like redirection begins to frustrate them and overwhelm them. So this may be more so for families who are still doing distance learning. So how do you keep them on task? What do you all suggest? I know the transitions are probably very helpful in this way too, so that way they kind of get a flow for when things are going to end. But is there anything else you'd recommend for this question?
I just read an article very recently, and I will try to access it and I'll send it to you, Chloe, but so that maybe you can put it out. But it was very affirming in that 2 minutes of aerobic, from 2 minutes to an hour, but as little as 2 minutes of aerobic activity can help with focus. So taking breaks for movement, to move the body in such a way that will raise our heart rate a bit, and then we can settle back down, but that it improves focus. And I'm reminded, when I walk in my neighborhood, and I'll try to walk every day, I see this lady running with about 5 little children. And I'm very intrigued. I'm intrigued. And I think that this must be what she's doing. It's maybe about 10 o'clock in the morning, and they're having their school break, and they are running, like they are really running. And I can hear her saying, come on, don't stop, give it all you got, just to the top of the hill. I mean, I can hear her really trying to move them. And I really think this is helpful to learning. So they need breaks like that. They need to move.
I love that visual of just a group of
I see it. I'm very, very intrigued, and I want to talk to her. Of course, the social distance, I don't, but I have a feeling this is what she's doing, and it's got to benefit those children. And I mean, they're probably between the ages of 7 and 10. They're running with her, about five children.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. The other thing that, so a couple of things that can be helpful is trying to set up their environment for success. I know everybody's home is laid out differently, and not everybody has the same opportunities to have the children in one place, or it's not always helpful for the kiddos for their concentration. And so really knowing your kiddo and what they need. Sometimes ourselves, as we're talking amongst ourselves as staff, is just having a designated place for work that's not our bedroom, so that when we're done with work, we can close it down and transition away from it, and it's not constantly there, right? And so on the flip side of that, for children, having school in their bedroom can be difficult for them to have a separation, right? And so if they're in school on the camera, but their toy is right over there in the corner, or the TV's on in front of them behind the screen, or something like that, that can add to those distractions. And so if there's a quiet place that they can work that's maybe not where their toys are at or where their games are at, they may not be as distracted to move away. Again, I know that's not possible for everybody, but I've also heard stories that I have several educators in my family and have heard stories of children who are like in their beds because they want to be cozy, but then they're falling asleep during the class because they're really comfortable. And so, you know, parents having to move them again to a table or to somewhere where they're sitting up, because in their bed, they just feel comfort. And so trying to, you know, observe your children, because they will have different needs. Some may work better in their bedrooms. Some may need that space at the kitchen table or in the living room with you, so that they can have that minimization of the things in their room that might tempt them to get off task. But the other thing, like Laura said, is just grace for ourselves and grace for the kids, that this is a lot. It's a lot to ask of them to sit still. You know, at school, they transition between activities, and they transition to lunch, and they transition to specials, and they transition to recess. And so there's several opportunities for movement in a typical school day that they don't get with the virtual setting, because they are having to be tied down to their computer. So even something as simple as, you know, like Laura said, walking to the end of the block, sitting outside on your front porch and just, or in your front yard or in your backyard, wherever your space is, to just kind of have a change of scenery. Can go a long way in kind of clearing the mind, giving them a little brain break. Mm-hmm.
Right.
I have to say, I giggled a little bit because as Cecilia was saying that, I was like, is she talking about me? Because as in, when we had to transition, you know, working from home for a little while, and we were still kind of half and half, right? But I think thinking about some of the things that were distracting for me, I think about that and say, if it's hard for me as an adult, how must that be for a child, right? If they're in their bedroom. And I mean, all it took me is looking at a bird outside my window at home, and it's like, oh, let me go look, you know, and everybody knows I love birds, right? I go over there. And so I had to think about where I'm going to sit, not be in front of a, you know, window, but that's me, right? And then also, my coworkers know 50 minutes is my limit. I'll sit for 50 minutes in front of the screen for our meeting, and then maybe 55 minutes, right? And then I'm already looking like, okay, I'm looking anxious, like it's time to get up. I need to take a break, stretch. Right. And so, and I'm not shy about telling the others, right, ladies?
Snacks, right?
Yeah. And so, but kids don't speak that language sometimes, and we just have to keep that in mind. Their bodies are going to show us, though, when they're distracted and we're having to redirect, or why aren't you in your room, or why aren't you in front of your computer? I mean, there's something they need, right? They need movement, they need something to drink, a snack or something. So just as we would need that, they need that as well. And I just want to point that out.
No,
Yeah, and
go ahead.
I'm sorry, I just wanted to build on what Letty and Laura both said about movement and needing to get up. I think with the educators or with ourselves as parents, thinking outside of the box too. There are days, I have a 10-year-old also who's on the computer, who's doing the virtual learning, and there are days where he can't sit at the table anymore because he's been there all day. So he'll go put his laptop on the floor in the living room, and he'll lay on the floor, and he's still there and he's still attentive, but he's in a different place and he's grounded in a different way, right? Or sometimes he'll stand up and he'll stand up and be present for class as opposed to sitting. But also like weighted blankets or the little, they sell them at Marshall's, they're little stuffed animals, but they have like lavender and rice inside of them. And so they have a little bit of weight. Things like that can also help children stay grounded if they do have to be seen, like if they're actively in a Zoom class and they can't be moving around. Things like that can kind of give them that sense of comfort and grounding so that they can stay seated for the duration of the actual Zoom session.
Right. I'm the same way, Letty. I have to move around. If I get distracted, then I have to move somewhere else, or else I'm like watching our neighbors and watching them take out the trash. Like, what are y'all doing over there? Like, I'm very nosy, I've found out since I've been working from home. I'll add, I don't know if this is helpful, but there was a show when I was little and I can remember watching it at my daycare actually, and it was called The Big Comfy Couch, and there was a woman who dressed up like a clown and she would read books. It was just kind of, you know, a silly show and different things would happen, but she would stretch on this clock, and the people at our daycare would have us stretch the same way because you're like moving your body like a clock. I mean, now that I'm older, I have no idea how she moves like that because I can't move and stretch like that. But I turned it on in the living room the other day while I was home by myself because I was feeling nostalgic, but I also was stretching along with her, and it helped me kind of to recenter. But if you have little ones, it makes more sense for you to look something like that up, not just me hanging out at home by myself. But it was a nice break to get a good stretch in when I started to feel overwhelmed and I couldn't focus anymore. And then I felt in a better place to kind of reset and say, okay, what do I have to get done? So definitely sitting at a computer all day can make you a little crazy. So we're halfway through our questions. So I just want to add quickly too, if you all have questions and you'd like to unmute yourself and ask them, or if you'd like to type them in the chat, feel free at any point as we're kind of going through these. Let me see, so the next question we have is, if we or someone we know has suffered a loss during COVID and wasn't able to say goodbye, what's the best way to cope with this loss and how can we support them? So I guess maybe if you all can give a perspective from if a family has suffered a loss and was able to say goodbye, what's the best way for them to cope? And then maybe if someone they know has suffered a loss, what's the best way for them to support them? Or what are some words they can say to them if they weren't able to say goodbye, if their friends weren't able to say goodbye? Does that make sense? So maybe a more personal and then a distant.
I think the more personal, the close loss, and we were not able to say goodbye, or we were not able to have a formal memorial or celebration of life where people come to support you in that. And so much of that is limited right now because of the pandemic restrictions. I just want to encourage people, and it's so hard, but it's never too late to say or do what you need to do to honor your person, to say the things that to say, I'm sorry, I forgive you, I love you, thank you, to say all of those important things in your own special way. And some ideas are to write letters to the person. If you have young children, everybody can come together and draw a picture for your special person. And you can invite a planting of a large tree in your yard or some field somewhere, and then tearing up, because paper is biodegradable, and putting it into the ground as you invite that new life. That can be something that's done. There are many ways. And just finding with your family, what would honor our person? Maybe making their favorite meal and having everyone come together in honor of your person, eating their favorite meal. And something my family has done in different ways was we make what I call blessing cakes, but you can call them anything you want, honor cake but little cupcakes where then everyone has their own little cake and a bunch of M&Ms, and everybody takes turns putting an M&M on the cake and naming one gratitude they have about that person. Like I will always remember how he took me to the zoo, or whatever it is, and then they put the M&M on their own cupcake, and everybody goes around sharing those mementos, those memories of their person, or ways that they will always remember them. And then you end up with this wonderful cupcake full of brightly colored M&Ms, and it's a joyful experience to share those together. And then so children love that kind of inviting, and it's a way of honoring your person together as a family. Other ideas are balloon releases. You can find balloons that are biodegradable on Amazon, and just sending a little message, or in your heart, saying something in your heart that you need to say and letting that go as a symbol. Very young children will literally believe that the balloon will take the message, and you can explain it any way that you feel is right for you. But the idea being, I will say what I need to say and release it. Those are just some ideas.
Those are beautiful. Thank you, Laura. I always feel like you give me new ideas too, because I know you've mentioned some of those before, but the blessing cake, like with the cupcakes, that's a new one, and I love that. And it involves things that everyone gets excited about too, right? Because who doesn't love then enjoying a cupcake together and spending more time together eating sweets? So I'll move on to the next question if y'all are okay with that, or do y'all have anything to add? I don't want to overlook anybody.
I wanted to add something really quick. As the holidays are coming, it can be a very difficult time for families, especially if this is their first year without their special person. And something that we have done with our families here at our center, I'm gonna move over here to show you. We have these ornaments that we have done in groups with them, where the plastic ornaments, and they can fill in little ribbons, little notes to hang on their tree. It doesn't have to be Christmas. It could be a fall tree. It could be any occasion. Something that I have some of my family members that have done for special people that we've lost this year. We've saved flowers from the services that we had for our loved ones and let them dry and put them inside the ornament, along with maybe some of the ribbon from the flowers that were given to our family members, and then a picture, glued a picture, just made a photocopy or a paper that's easier to glue on there, and then use the silver or like Sharpie pens that have the silver gold and write the date or a special message on the outside. So it's something I like to do with clients here too, and I've been encouraging our student counselors as a goodbye gift, or like when they're terminating with their clients as well, when they're ending their services with them. But just sometimes just holding on to some of the things that that we received also as gifts during this very difficult time. Sometimes we don't have, don't know what to do with it, or we don't want to discard of them or something, just not sure. These are just some ideas of how to incorporate that into just preserving some of it.
That's a great idea. That I'm sure that those look beautiful once they're complete, and it's fun to do together, right? That you all get to spend time and maybe have those conversations and discuss memories about your loved one. Thank you guys for sharing those. So our next question is about teens again. So do teens process grief differently than children and adolescents? And is there any advice on how to best communicate with them about their grief?
I don't think
Oh, I just, one thing I want to say is, one thing that I've heard from teenagers is that they have said to me, I don't want to be treated like a little kid. I don't want to be treated like a little kid. And I think their message sometimes with that is that they want to be given the space to talk about what they have going on. And again, as I had stated earlier, just listening to them and not telling them that they shouldn't feel a certain kind of way. But I think it is, I mean, pain is pain, right? But it is displayed in different ways. And I think also what impacts the way that it is shown is the maturity of the child. Sometimes you have younger children who present as more mature, right? And then we may misinterpret that of them not needing as many hugs or as much attention. But it's just being very mindful about where our child is and being open to listening to them and taking into account their maturity level. Teenagers, again, like I said earlier, aren't gonna say, I want a hug. Some will. My daughter was always like, I need a hug. Okay, she got better at it. She wasn't always like that. But she learned to be safe and say, I need a hug. It's okay to say so. But just keeping that in mind that sometimes our children are not gonna flat out say what they need. But I just want to add to that part. Laura, I think Laura was gonna.
I think it's important to remember too that teens have at just their natural course of development. I find that teens naturally have they are more internal processors. They're going to keep more inside, and they also have a natural developmental, as part of their developmental course, a natural tendency to find more independence from parents and more aligned with peers. So I think it's important for teens to have peer connections. And because they're not talking to you as their parent, doesn't mean that they're not processing it somewhere and with someone. But just being respectful, I think, of those needs, that they need some independence and they need peers.
Right. That's great insight too. So we're ending our time together, but I do want to end on one specific question that I'm sure would be helpful to everyone right now. And it's, how can we let our children know that we are readily available to comfort them without making them feel fearful or overwhelmed about the pandemic? So a lot of what you all mentioned today is just letting children, adolescents, teens know, I'm here if you need to talk, but how do you balance that so that maybe a child who is processing it okay might feel overwhelmed and like, well, should I be feeling something? I feel okay. Why do you keep asking me if I'm okay? What is your advice on balancing those things?
I think, again, as a parent, you know your child better than anyone. You know their quirks, and you can kind of tell when they're having a bad day, or even when they're not verbalizing their emotions. Often we watch them and we observe, and we know when something's a little off, right? And so with little ones, again, maybe it's just naming like, hey, it looks like you're feeling a little scared, or like you need some extra hugs. And so you're offering that support without asking them, are you okay? Right. And so it's that, like Laura was saying, that reflection, observing and letting them know what you're seeing. You're being that mirror for them and saying, hey, I noticed this, I see this. Do you need a hug? Do you want to talk? And just leaving that space open, because when you're reflecting to them, they're going to feel seen, right? And little ones oftentimes will take you up on the hug or on a walk. Teenagers may not. They may tell you, I'm okay, nothing's wrong, right? And I think the hardest job for us as parents is to respect that autonomy, because sometimes we know that they're not okay, that they're working through something. But like you said, finding a balance of not being intrusive or I guess kind of overbearing, right? We want to let them know, if they say, no, I'm fine, something, you can say something as simple as, okay, well, if you feel like you need to talk later, just come let me know, or I'll be around, or whatever that, that offering that you can give. But that's a way to make yourself available without feeling like you have to be all day long kind of asking, are you okay? Are you okay? And some kiddos really are okay. So just respecting that they know what they need. Yeah.
Right.
I think it's great.
Yeah, that's a great point. Well, thank you guys so much. We're right at 12. We appreciate all of you for taking some time to join us. We did record this, so I'm gonna end the recording and then we'll get that sent out to everyone who wasn't able to make it. And we'll also send it out to everyone if you want to refer back to it. But if you have questions later on that maybe as you're going through the day, you think of something, just send them to Julia and we'll figure out a way to get them to the counselors and get you guys the answers you need. Just like you all have been so supportive of the center and our mission, we want to in turn be sure that we're supportive to each of you as we all kind of transition through this time together. It's just a way to say thanks and give back to you all. So Julia, do you have anything you want to close with? Any announcements, I guess, or?
No announcements, just a quick thank you. You guys said so many things that once you said it, it was so obvious. But, you know, just a reminder for me to get down on my girls' level was huge. It was, as a mom, it was really helpful. So I really appreciate each of you guys and Chloe, you for making all of this happen. Happy Friday.
No, happy Friday, everybody. I hope you'll do something fun this weekend and just know that we're here for you if you need us. So hope you all have a great day.